it sounds like you're rebuilding the Earth's grid.
We're not rebuilding it, we're building a new one,
Okay.
right? And there's a subtle difference in
Yeah.
that because ultimately, me personally,
Mm-hmm.
I feel all of us are going to form the new light grid. And the towers are helping for us to step into that
To
capacity
tune into the
and to
field.
be that. Yes.
Interesting.
In the meantime, yes, they're holding the light. And ultimately, our vision is to have a world in a few years from now to where we have enough of these large towers out there to where the next generations don't have to worry about EMF anymore.
Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Corey, and welcome to Cultivating Change. I'm really excited for this episode. I do my best to highlight big shifts that I see or I can find in the worlds of decentralized health, nutrition, food production, water, and energetics. This episode is a big shift, large scale shift in the energetics. I was fortunate enough to sit down with Nico, who you'll meet from the Wellness Enterprise, on his road trip to change the world in Wilmington, North Carolina during a massive thunderstorm. That was pretty cool. And I got to sit next to a device called the Cosmic Tower, which you'll learn about, that was just fascinating energetically. If you're at all sensitive to any of the new electromagnetic radiation, if you're worried about EMFs and how to mitigate it for you or your kids, or you're sensitive to artificial light, all of the stimulation and electrosmog, as Nico would call it, coming off of it, and wondering how to mitigate it and how to still like function in society without, slowly being poisoned by it all. The point of the road trip to change the world in Nico's mind is to rebuild a new harmonic grid. To take the energy, we go into all of the interesting sacred energy sites, temple energy, primal waters, and toroidal fields, torsion physics, down to some of the real subtle energy fields that kind of govern the world as it is. If you're interested in any of that, this is a fantastic conversation. I cannot thank Nico enough, and I hope you enjoy. Welcome to Wilmington, Nico.
Well, thank you.
Okay, we connected from my friend Patrick on my last episode about the Aqua Energizer, and then he told me about this tour that you guys are having, and this device, which I had not seen anywhere,
Yes.
for some reason. And if we lose power briefly, everyone, we're in the middle of a torrential thunderstorm, so we'll see how that works. We are next to the ocean. What is the tour? What are you doing going across the country with this thing? And what is this thing?
Yeah, we're really, promoting the Cosmic Tower, but ultimately, what it is about and what got me involved in this project is that this was the first EMF solution that wasn't just about me, my family, and my home, because people want healthy organs, right? But what about the outer organs? My lungs have an intimate relationship with the trees. My stomach has an intimate relationship. I cannot go in the morning yet and just take in the sunlight and the energy, right? So we have outer organs, vegetables, fruits, and the plants that yield those. So this is more about bringing awareness to people that it's not about returning to nature, it's recognizing we are a part of nature and to become stewards of nature again and to actually put solutions out there that address, not just your own health and your home, but that also address nature. And that's what really got me excited about this project. And that's really what my message is about, that, we have one great mother in common, which is Mother Earth. And we've been brats, basically. We've been partying and the parents have just called. They're like right around the corner. It's time to clean up our room. We made a mess, right? And ultimately, our vision is to have a world in a few years from now to where we have enough of these large towers out there to where the next generations don't have to worry about EMF anymore.
It's a huge... most people probably aren't aware of how big it is, maybe because they just aren't as sensitive. Like, I am very obnoxiously in tune with my body, so like I can still sleep if I have Wi-Fi on, but I feel better if I turn it off. And I pick up subtle fields everywhere, and this thing feels strange. Like just sitting next to it,
Yeah.
it feels like I'm getting pulsed. So
Yeah.
what is it doing?
Yeah, basically, are you familiar with power spots in nature, like you have in Sedona, the
Like energy spots,
vortexes?
yeah.
Yeah,
Asheville was kind of a vortex. It was built on a mountain of quartz, so
well,
kind of like
yeah,
that.
yeah. There you go. So these are all over nature. Like this is like I spent the last 3 winters in Egypt. I spend a lot of time with the temples. The temples are built on these sacred power spots, right? And these power spots, like going into the Egyptians, they would build the temples on top of these power spots. That's also why you see churches being built on top of churches and churches, and they explain it as a way, yeah, one religion wants to take over the other. No, it's not really what it's about. It's not about the temple, it's not about the church, it's about the natural power spot that is present. And they had the wisdom and they were still so connected with nature that they didn't build on the earth, they built with nature. And look at them as like amplifiers and distributors of this sacred energy all throughout their civilization to where not only humanity, like the people would thrive, but also the land, the plants, the animals. So the easiest way to explain this is that this is like a sacred power spot on the earth, but portable, to where you can bring it into your home, to where it creates this harmonized field. And then people will ask me, can the cosmic tower heal this? Can it heal this? No. The cosmic tower doesn't heal anything. It creates a harmonized, balanced, energetic outer environment, also helps you with your inner environment. And as you know, the body already has the intelligence within.
Right. So it kind of mimics a biofield.
It does. So, because what causes sacred power spots in nature to appear in those places, right? It's really about, we have this, you can call it primal water, rock water that's deep, and that's not like tap water. This is water that's 10,000 years or older, and that has all these healing properties. It's living water. And when those cross at certain angles, it creates that vortex, which is a toroidal field, right? And that toroidal field, it's what's responsible for the beneficial energies that you experience in those places. So this is built on these same nature principles, right? It contains two vessels of water, one in the
Thought I
bottom,
heard sloshing.
yeah, and one in the top. And it contains a special mixture of healing waters to where the full rainbow frequencies of light are present in the water. So no overlap. Because when you get overlap, it's either going to cancel out a particular frequency or over amplify it. So are you familiar with torsion fields,
Yeah.
the Russians? Okay, then this is going to be easy to explain. So we have a crystal in the center. Then it goes through an activation process where the water in the bottom container is programmed to spin counterclockwise. No, not like you're gonna look at it and it's going like this. On a subatomic level, think of like the torsion field going counterclockwise, the one in the top going clockwise, poof, it opens up this toroidal field, which is then connected to the higher realms through the center. And so there's a continuous throughput of higher energy, harmonious energy, that is then being distributed, throughout the environment to where you get this bubble around your home. And within that bubble, you will experience all the same effects as you would at a sacred power spot. So the water will be structured, right? Any foods that contain water, you know as well as I do, once it's harvested, it starts losing its life force. You add EMF on top of it, which robs life force and dehydrates things, it gets even worse. By the time you get that organic apple, there's no life force left. So the cosmic tower basically like re-energizes that because it restructures the water in your fruits and vegetables, not only to where they keep longer, but your body is getting what it really wants, which is life force.
So I used to have a microgreens farm, and I would explain kind of living water
Yes.
kind of that way. Like it's very easy to think whenever you like cut microgreens, baby version of any vegetable, they start decaying immediately. Like
Yes.
so they have maximum life force, maybe 12 hours.
Yes.
But we tend to think about, or I tend to think about it just in terms of like nutritional value, like the
Yeah.
micronutrients are decreasing. We're talking about the energetics, so the
Yes.
non-chemical aspects as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you break it all down on the most fundamental level, it's all energy
Right.
with particular attributes and hopefully with like a lot of life force, because that's what your body runs on, and not just your body, the trees. That's what makes the planets spin, the galaxies. And that's what, for example, the ancient civilizations like the Egyptians knew. They were able to tap into that directly, and then, we can live so much longer, but so much healthier, which is more important, not
Right.
the length of our life, but it's nature's intelligence, right? Oftentimes, we have people explain life force, oh, it's just electricity, it's just negative ions. No, it's not, because else I could plug my fingers in this outlet and I wouldn't have to eat tonight, right? Life force is so much more. Life force, is connected through all the subtle realms back to the source, and it's intelligent, and it brings coherence into our bodies. Like it's so much more than just electricity. Right? We've dumbed it down to that level because our science only looked at the 2%, the electromagnetic spectrum, the world of the senses. It just basically ignores all of the subtle realms.
Right. And that's what I can usually feel, but it's hard to explain.
Yes.
Like the thing that always gets me is there's usually a personality or bridge between the language always gets me because I have a very engineering brain,
Me
and it
too.
takes someone to just have more precise language
Yes.
to make my left brain feel safe. And I go, oh, so that like, it took 17 years for someone to explain it in a way I could understand, but it works nonetheless all the time.
Absolutely. Whether you understand it or not, it still affects you.
Yeah. What are these three staring at us? Are those the crystals?
No, it has cameras in there,
No,
but
I
it's fine.
was just like, wait,
No,
oh.
just a joke. But actually, we have one at Dr. Klinghardt. I don't know if you know him, up in Seattle. Famous German doctor. He has a big one, and some of his clients has. Is there a camera in there?
Well, they kind of, yeah.
Yeah, just joking. So the inventor used to say that they were purely cosmetic,
Oh,
and there's a crystal behind there, but I honestly don't know because there's something to the blue light.
right.
But I can't explain it with certainty because he never gave me, he said, oh, that's just cosmetic, but I just feel there's more to it because of the interaction with the light. And actually, this kind of sound crazy, but some people have actually seen a light come out of it where the crystal
Oh, I
lights
could believe
up.
that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Because you're like, I would expect that to have weird things happen that I
Oh, yeah.
couldn't fully explain if it was just sitting in my house and I was conscious of it. You mentioned when we were talking that it responded to consciousness.
Absolutely, because it is conscious. Actually, this is one of the downfalls of mainstream science that thinks we're conscious and everything else is stupid.
Right.
Now, everything is conscious, all the way from the electron to the universe itself. It's like one of those, what do you call those Russian dolls stacked within each other, right? That's kind of like how our reality is built up, like electrons, atoms, cells, everything is conscious. We are conscious. The earth is conscious. The sun is conscious. The galaxy is conscious, right? And that's one of those shifts that we need to make. And as science has proven, water itself is conscious, living water. Dr. Emoto, I mean, look at it.
That's why I have this thing right here, which I just
Yes.
it was a trip. Like I'm very used to hydrogen water, and
Yeah.
but this thing, there was like a tingly. There
Yeah.
was an immediate different feeling on my tongue, like within seconds, and I was like, oh, okay, that is completely different.
Yeah,
than
that
anything.
tingle's what your body's after.
What is?
The tingle
Yeah.
that you
The
sense,
tingles, yeah.
right? That's like the charge. That's like the life force that you're picking up on because you have the sensitivity because your attunement to your body is so.
Yeah, on my last, when I chatted with Patrick about this, he described living water as, or nature's water, as softer and wetter, which sounds odd because you're like, well, isn't our water already wet? But then when I did it, I was like, oh, that's what he means.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Distinct.
there's so much more to it. I mean, I come from an engineering background. I'm an electromechanical engineer. Why, of all substances, did creator, source, whatever you call it, choose water? You'd be like, use stainless steel or something, something. But no, water is actually, it's the carrier of life force. It's structured water that's like our bio battery. And, water is essential to life. That's why life in this planet started out of water.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time, all the old stories were desert stories. And I went through a hurricane last fall. You realize very quickly what everything is built on when it disappears. When you
Yes.
don't have access to it, and you're like, oh, none of this matters without water.
Yeah.
Just like, if you don't have a supply of clean water to start, people go crazy. 3 days. It like happens very quickly.
Absolutely.
So yeah, water is the
Ever done a dry
foundation.
fast?
It's definitely the foundation.
Yeah.
Are some of the sacred sites that you're talking about, like a lot of the healing water sites that a lot of the like new technologies, water ionizers, a lot of these electricity-based machines, we're trying to mimic like Lourdes, France, Nordenau, Germany, Zamzam water out of Mecca. Are those the same sacred sites
Yes.
that you're talking about?
Every sacred site, there's water there. Oftentimes they will have, the holy water in the church. If you look in Egypt, all the sacred temples either had a sacred lake with it, or there was at least some water feature, even the pyramids, right? The elders that I knew in Egypt, I just had this hobby. It just seemed to happen to me to run into elders everywhere and shamans. But like they explained to me, like Scheherazade Awian, their family lives in the first house by the Sphinx. And she explained that when her dad was young, yeah, water was still flowing in front of the parents. They would go swim under the Giza plateau in like the water veins and then like all the water that was there. Yes, yes, yes.
It's hard to imagine, like it would make perfect sense if the water was still present there, why the pyramids were there and why they were built the way they were. But it's hard to imagine because it's not there, and it is like a unharmonious, it's not conceptually clicking whenever I look at it. And that's why people could throw all sorts of theories around. Didn't they just find massive potential copper below the pyramids?
Yeah. There's this underground city there. There's a hall of records under the Sphinx. Like that's what I learned from my Taoist master before any of this stuff came out.
Oh, I could pick your brain about that for a long, long time.
Oh yeah, I got time. Right, but I know what you're getting at. But look at where all the temples, if you look at it, they're all built by the Nile. Why all by the Nile? You get all this space. No, because it needs water, really, really to function. Right? Because the water is really at the basis of this life force, of this harmonious energy and carrying that.
Random thought that popped in. I've noticed just cell towers are either on top of mountains, obviously, or right by bodies of water. And I always wondered if that was A, to corrupt the life force, or if they're hijacking some of the energy and power that that's just there because of the water. Do you have any opinion on that?
I don't know about that one, but what I've seen often is to where they put them in churches.
Oh, really?
And that's a really bad idea because most of these, at least the ancient churches, right? Not the new ones that were built without the ancient knowledge, but I'm talking about the ancient ones. You're basically now, you're poisoning the entire Earth's grid lines with this EMF.
Yeah.
And you're spreading it far and wide. So it's like a terrible idea. And a perfect example is, I study biogeometry. I'm an engineer and I like to measure and for myself. But I also love Dr. Ibrahim Karim, the inventor of biogeometries, like what he calls the physics of quality, which is all about subtle energies. And he was called in over 20 years ago in Hamburg, Switzerland, where they had massive problems because they put antennas in like the church, and what everybody started to get sick. And here's the thing with these man-made EMFs, many of like the symptoms are mental or emotional in nature: depression, anxiety, aggression, can't sleep, irritability. And people started developing that. The animals that could flee, they went out of the area. Those that couldn't had miscarriages, tumors, So yeah, he went out there, Swiss government and Swiss Telecom called him in. We have this problem, how we can solve it. He's like, take the antenna out of the church. They're like, we're not going to do that. So he ended up harmonizing all of that energy to where the government doctors would come in and the symptoms reduced by 60%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then all the wildlife came back. It was all back like a year later, and he only used shapes. So people that think that this is hard to believe that it harmonizes, for those that are not in tune and cannot really feel subtle energy, can you imagine? All he did was put certain shapes up in strategical places, and that's how he harmonized the energy. And this harmonization principle is really important because you cannot block out EMF.
Right, I was going to say, so this is the big debate that drives me nuts online with any of the non-native EMF harmonizers. So I'm wearing like a flower of, it's not organite, shungite, flower of
Yes, yes.
life. I see lots of copper, toroidal fields. I see Aries Tech. I see that everywhere. And people always go, it's not a Faraday cage. It's not blocking the thing. Because harmonize is one of those words
Yeah.
where my engineering brain goes, I don't know what that means.
Yes.
Right. What does that mean?
Well, so here's the issue. Like, our science considers what's real all the way up to the speed of light. Electromagnetic spectrum, everything else, it's nonsense. While it's not true, science is a study of phenomena, right? We have thoughts, we have feelings, those are phenomena, and they're just like, oh, that's just an illusion in your head. No, absolutely not. They've actually proven the speed of thought in Germany, where they hooked two people up to a computer, showed a picture, boom, instant response in the other person 300 miles away, right? So I call it like the 2% versus the 98%, like the iceberg, the conscious versus the unconscious mind. The 2% is the electromagnetic realm where linear time exists, the Big Bang is governed by cause and effect. But underlying that, beyond the speed of light, you have all these subtle layers of existence, and they're not electromagnetic in nature. And that's where the big rub is, because with a Faraday cage, you can block out, electromagnetic waves, but you cannot block out what we call electrosmog, which is non-electromagnetic in nature. So have you ever seen when a boat goes through water and you have the big wave?
Yeah.
Consider that electromagnetic radiation. But then you have these small ripples, and they linger and they go far and they just stay there. Now add multiple boats, they go into resonance and start forming standing waves. So we're just constant, ripples on the water. The same is electrosmog is the same thing. I have people come to me all the time, right? Everything's wired on my home. I checked with my EMF meter. Everything is very low values, and I'm still having the symptoms, and my doctor's telling me it's psychosomatic.
Right.
I was like, no, absolutely not. Because what I just talked about, these ripples, they disturb all of our subtle layers, our energetic bodies, our emotional, mental, and even our connection to our spiritual body. And they will not show up on an EMF meter. Right?
What your body's telling you.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's like inaudible sound in the background that's always there, and it's like death metal.
Right.
Right? And your ears can't hear it, but your cells are listening to it 24/7.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
So that's where things like the physics of quality comes in. The physics of quality is not about how strong is the field, but what is this energy's effect on a living organism? Because I can put a device here. One of them is an electromagnetic based healing device, and one is a radiation weapon. And we can put them at the same strength, and your EMF meter will read the same values. One is a potential to heal you, and one can kill you.
Interesting.
And you can't tell the difference. So people are just misled. We're just looking at the electromagnetic.
So we have crude tools, essentially.
Yeah. I mean, we're trying to term length with a scale.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and this is really, like, this is the most important concept for people to understand, because you cannot block these. They're like scalar waves, and they travel straight through a Faraday cage, And it's almost like, when you see rain come down, the rain coming down is electromagnetic radiation. The fog that lingers is electrosmog, and it's not electromagnetic in
Good
nature.
analogy. I hadn't heard that before. Yeah, that's very visual. I like that. So this is essentially harmonizing all of those ripples in the house.
Yes. And think of harmonization as electromagnetic technology. There's a carrier wave aspect, and then there's the information it carries.
Right.
So the information it carries is always the energy of the source, which in the case of man-made EMFs is detrimental. This also uses these carrier waves, but the source is a mixture of living healing water that then gets spread through the environment. So we cannot block EMF because we have satellites now. Faraday cages don't work. Also, I think it's a terrible idea to sleep under a Faraday cage, one of those net things, because you're filtering out all the good signals from Mother Nature too.
Yeah.
Think about when astronauts go into space and don't have the Schumann resonance or connection to the electromagnetic field.
Or
the
gravity.
havoc.
Yeah, the body starts deteriorating. Yeah.
Exactly. So do not do that because you're just indiscriminately filtering everything out, and it's simply not protecting you from electrosmog because it'll go right through that.
That's a really good analogy. I love looking at mitochondrial signaling in health.
Yes. Yeah.
Because health is
tunneling of the
overwhelming.
electrons.
Like, you can get lost. I do get lost routinely, almost daily, in rabbit holes of nutrition. Is this one right? Is this one right? Everyone's trying to prove each other wrong. And the only ones that I feel like get to the core, or at least make sense to me, is signaling. And if you go to like mitochondrial signaling, that's
Yes.
a real fundamental layer where everything is, if the communication is disrupted, everything breaks. And you can like just think about a misfunctioning like traffic light on the highway.
Yeah.
If signaling disappears,
example.
it's going to be bad
Chaos.
for every, complete chaos.
Yeah, and a lot of that signaling, if you look at the work of Konstantin Meil, like a German professor, he talks about these, people use scalar waves. I like using longitudinal compression waves. And scalar wave is a type of a longitudinal compression wave. And to explain this, like in a way people can understand, imagine sound traveling through the air is a longitudinal wave, right? Like the movement goes at the same axis as the wave is traveling, right? Now imagine that, but in the ether.
Okay.
Right? In the ether, you have these longitudinal compression waves, and these are actually, they carry information between planes, right? Like harmonics on a piano, where the same quality repeats every octave. Same here. So you have these vertical axes where there's all these communication through longitudinal compression waves, and our bodies use them too, right? The signaling in our body is not just a chemical process, it's impossible. So we have all these longitudinal waves, that really make the signaling happening that you're talking about. Now, the issue with our EMF is, it creates these so loud, like you're at a rock concert and you need to hear a whisper on the other side of the room. It's not happening.
So just noise all the time.
Constantly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Interesting.
And it's driving people crazy, and that you express.
I agree. Yeah, it drives me nuts. And yeah, because the expression that I always hear is, don't worry, it's non-ionizing. And then I go, it doesn't matter. Like if it's disrupting communication at all. Like if you just think about 2.4 gigahertz, billions of cycles a second, there's no way that pulse does not screw with you at the cellular level. Billions of cycles a second. And it's only getting worse. Like the smaller the wave, the more likely, like huge radio waves are one thing, right? My basic training was the bigger the wave, the safer it is. The smaller the wave, more intense the frequency.
Because it's more energy.
Right.
The higher the vibration, the more subtle, the more powerful.
Right.
Now think about these faster than light rooms. That's why, you cannot truly heal if you have all these mental limiting beliefs, these emotional blockages, when your vitality body, your energy is all discordant. It's just not happening. Subtle does not mean weak.
Right. That's good.
Okay?
I like that. Yeah.
A lot of people think subtle is just mean, it's weak. Subtle means it cannot be perceived by most people.
Right.
It's a big difference.
Which is more dangerous.
Absolutely.
Right.
Think about gamma
Yeah, if you
radiation
don't
versus.
notice it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's the
But
screen.
also, gamma radiation can be positive. Think about a Tibetan Lama generating gamma in their brain.
Oh, sure.
So it's not so much about frequency, it's about quality. It's about Dr. Karim, for example, talks. Frequency by itself doesn't tell you anything, which is another mistake. What matters is the amplitude relative to the frequency. So when you change that, you can actually make it to where it's no longer detrimental to your body. Do you know that we could re-engineer pretty easily all of these Wi-Fi routers and everything to where it would carry healing
I always
energy?
thought about that.
Yeah,
If they're carriers. Yeah.
yeah, healing information through our environment, and really, it's what the Cosmic Tower does also. Like, you get a Cosmic Tower in your home, your EMF readings are going to be exactly the same, or else all your stuff stops working, all your devices. But if you measure it from a qualitative point of view, the quality of the energy has changed from detrimental to beneficial. So I used to get pretty worked up about the 5G towers. Now I'm just, thank you for putting another carrier wave out there.
Oh,
We're going to
interesting.
change the information.
Huh.
Because you don't fight the old, you outcreate it,
Right.
you know.
How do you measure quality?
It's a great question. First off, I want to say this is nothing new,
Right.
right? Most people are familiar with dowsing,
Yep.
right? What I'm talking about is what they call physical radiesthesia. And it uses what looks like pendulums, but it's so different because the issue with regular dowsing, and rightfully so, is that most people say like, well, if your mind's not really clear, consciously or unconsciously, you're going to be influencing the results. I mean, I know people that are really good at it, right? I'm not dissing any of those people, but you have to be really clear in your mind and your subconscious mind. You cannot have any desired outcomes, right? But physical radiesthesia uses similar tools, but the tool is built to have a resonance with the quality that you're measuring or the plane that you're measuring. So it doesn't go through the mind, right? Basically, I can have the color red here and show it to you, and there's going to be a conscious response, of your associations with that color. But if I hold that color red behind you in your field, it's still going to affect you, right? It's basically our biofield will respond to that.
Okay.
And that's what the tool picks up on because science has tried to factor the human out. And as Goethe said, that the human is actually the most precise instrument because we're connected through all of these planes of nature. So physical radiesthesia or scientific radiesthesia, the tools are built to have a direct resonance with the qualities that you're measuring. And this is nothing new. In World War II, they used it to find bombs. They taught the Marines this in Vietnam, to use this to find, landmines and other things. And, also, having lived in Asheville, all the water wells, do you really think they just started digging and then hope to find water? No, you call a water dowser.
Yep.
That can tell you, dig here at this altitude where you find the water. Those are examples of that. But ancient Egyptians also used it because when we got satellites, they found all the places in the Sinai Desert where there was gold. They went to look. The Egyptians had already been there and mined it all.
So do you think we're rediscovering or remembering much older technologies, but we've forgotten the precision or the specifics that maybe the Egyptians had, so we have to reconfigure it in our own language or on our own understanding?
Yes, that's part of it, but I also want to point out that, maybe as a collective,
Right.
I don't think we forgot. We were kind of programmed out of it.
Better.
But if you look at the French and the Germans, the scientific radiesthesia, they kept developing it.
Okay.
It's just been pushed away by mainstream science and being written off as quackery,
Yeah.
like homeopathy, quackery, right? Not if you understand energetics. So what I think is that we as a society, we're reawakening. To me, it's not we have to really search for the solution. It's like it's a remembrance process.
Right.
We've been doing this for thousands and thousands of years, except for this last, 100 or 100 plus.
I can trace most things back to 1910, somewhere around Rockefeller. Like a whole bunch of stuff just got tossed to the side whenever petrochemical took over.
Absolutely, because, when we disconnect from our nature, from the source energy, and yeah, we're easy to control.
Easy targets, yeah.
Right? Because that's where our power lies.
Yeah. And there's been a number of people that I've listened to who always serve as a voice to help remind me of that, of remember. But then once I leave that state of consciousness in meditation in my house or wherever I have like a sanctuary type of nature and I go back into the world, it is difficult to carry that just in my daily life. So it always helps to have someone at a different angle even telling me how to remember again.
Yeah. I mean, I want to make really clear to you, I didn't believe in any of this for 36 years.
Yeah.
I'm an electromechanical engineer. My mother passed in 2012 through euthanasia in Belgium. I went through hell and back through hell and back, because I thought I had like lost her. And then I started to have all these dreams and all these weird thoughts that started reaching out to me. 3 months later, having dinner with my first mentor, who was a Reiki master and born a natural channel. We'd had lunch together every 2 weeks, like my mother was at the table. She had never met my mother. That was like my wake-up call.
Yeah.
And then I had so many experiences. My mother made all these predictions about my future. I could not possibly know, and that all like happened. Because she told my first mentor, Nico's gonna be really skeptical about this and probably think that he's just like wishful thinking or whatever. Let me just predict these things from his future that he cannot possibly know, and they're all gonna happen. And once that happens, he'll be reassured he's not going crazy, even though his family says, he's lost his mind. Right?
Yeah. The intuitive nature is a trip to discover and usually takes something seriously dramatic. Like I've had the good fortune of knowing and dabbling myself, but I have had very prominent people in my life, mostly in Nashville, who I run into, and they're so in their intuitive nature where it reminds me that all the times I felt it to actually trust it.
Yes.
My issue is always trust. I'm just like, I don't trust myself, which is probably most people too. But as I learn to hone in on it a little more, I often wish that I could turn it off sometimes just because things get overwhelming.
Yeah.
You're so sensitive to everything. And then you're like, I need a cosmic tower in my house, or I need this, because it takes so much energy sometimes to stay in my presence and my intuitive state with just bombardment of everything. But that's why I love technology. Like we're the ultimate technology, but Joe Dispenza has a whole bit like staying conscious or staying in that state is nearly impossible every day. So if I can have a technology that'll help me with biofield or help me with structure water, or help me with any of this, I'll take it. Like I'll take the technology so that I can work on cultivating in myself with a little more ease.
Yeah, that's what I always, and that's beautiful, your perspective on this. That's always also what I always tell people. Listen, the cosmic towers, they're not here to do it for you. But they're kind of like the training wheels. While you learn to ride a bike, you can do it without. You're just gonna smash your face into the concrete a lot more, and it's just gonna take longer, and it's gonna be more challenging. So I say, in a way, these are a temporary solution to help us, because we have a lot of meditators that use them, and they say it would take me such a long time to just work through all the noise
Mm.
and be deeply centered. But ever since I got my tower, it's
Just
like
tune in.
this. So I mean, we're all busy too, and we got busy lives, and so there's no issue with just getting there faster. It just saves you this drive all the way out to nature.
Right.
You just bring nature to your home, and then when you go deeper, you develop more, and you become more like a cosmic tower. Not that you start to look like this, but you become this harmonizing influence on the world around you, right? And it becomes easier to hold that energy.
Yeah, and I can feel those people everyone can feel those people when they walk into a room and you're like, oh, something just shifted. Like
Yep.
there's something about that dude's energy or that woman's
Yep.
energy. And yeah, that's the goal, is just to become that. I guess that's just purely authentic, right? To
Yeah.
just emit your own vibration, just your authenticity all the time or as much as possible, and see who gets pissed off and see who gravitates towards you.
Yeah, exactly. I know
Which
that
is still the
feeling.
hard part for me. The people pleaser in me really doesn't like the pissing off part.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which then also is a limiting belief to look into and release, and
That's a good way of putting it. This thing is large-ish. I'm assuming you have different sizes.
Yeah. So we have three main categories that I put them in. So we have this one, which is the strongest one that we have here in the US for like your personal home.
For a house, okay.
Yeah. And then we have about half that size. So this is a Cosmic Tower 75 centimeters tall.
Gotcha.
Then we have Cosmic Tower 35 centimeters tall. Now, this one is 6 times more powerful than the 35 because what determines how strong they are is how much water and how far the vessels are spread apart. Then we have a mini one that's only this big. It has enough water in it to where you can take it through TSA in your carry-on. But this field is maybe only about 7.5 feet around you. So it's only meant to protect you while you're outside of the range of the bigger one, so
Personal
you
bubble.
don't degrade.
Interesting.
Right? But it will have all of the same benefits of this one, meaning that any water within its field is structured.
Yeah, that's a cool point. I'll just do it for you. Yeah, instead of having separate devices.
because even if you have another way of structuring water, and then you go off to work and you take your structured water there, and you're just getting bombarded with non-native EMF, and it loses all its life force and structure. So when you have the small tower with you, you can actually, it keeps the water structured, or if it's not structured, it will structure it. And I will show you pictures of that water taken. So in Holland, they took tap water and then sent it, kind of like Emodo, the photography, but just, less of a magnification. So you don't see the individual crystal, but more the fern structures that you see when water has vitality. So we would send the sample in Holland to a lady that does photography. And then you see for the regular tap water, just all distorted, no vitality. And then they took some tap water and only put it for 2 minutes with the smallest tower and sent it in. And you can see beautiful fern structures. And the lady was amazed. She's like, I've been doing this for over 15 years. This water, you can see the rainbow hues come off of the structure.
And that made it through the transport.
Yeah. I mean, they wrapped them, right, to protect them for the best, and it wasn't like far, and they brought it over, right? But just the little guy was able, to structure that tap water, and a picture, you'll see the picture says more than like 1,000 words. So the mini has those same benefits, and it's mainly meant for protection. So you can take it on a plane with you to work.
So we're just getting range, personal bubble,
Yes,
house
house
bubble.
bubble. And now this is where I got really excited
Yeah.
about the project, is the big ones. So we're talking the Cosmic Tower 220 and 250. So 2.2 meters, 2.5 meters tall, which is about 7.2 feet and 8.2 feet tall, 340
Taller than
pounds.
me. Yeah.
Right? Now these go like the 220 goes about 250 miles around where it's set up, and the 250 can go about 310 miles around where it's set up. And that's what excited me, because we have been building out this entire network, and what it is doing is it's regenerating nature. It is tackling 5G for the entire environment, but so much more, because I talked about electrosmog. Our thoughts, our emotions also create the smog effect. Harmonizing all that, harmonizing geopathic stress, all these different things. Plus, on top of that, they work kind of like a family, like a collective consciousness. So the larger towers will support the smaller ones. Now, does that mean that, for example, New York, oh, you only need one of those? No, you also have to look at the total distorted energy that is there, right? Whether when you're on a ranch in Montana versus
Right.
in Manhattan, very different energetic environment. So you might need, a couple dozen
The
for
noise of
big.
the chaos is just
Yeah.
there.
I mean, the one tower will definitely, so it has the ability to send energy anywhere in that range, but like what it will do, and can keep stable is less. But we're still talking maybe like 20 miles or more, which is
Right.
like, man, I mean, think about it. Like, that's like incredible. That's what really got my attention.
Yeah.
And I was like, I want to help you, because all this, like just me and my family protect me, it's not gonna work if we don't help nature
Right.
and help our environment.
I just thought the image popped into my brain of the last Harry Potter movie when the assault on the school on Hogwarts happens and all the teachers and students create this massive white bubble around like energetic shield, and then all the Death Eaters are like lobbing spells at it and it slowly crackles. That's what came in whenever we were thinking about like chaotic energy. It's kind of
Yeah,
taking little hits at it. So you just
yeah.
need more reinforcement
It's a
protection.
little bit like that because for people that whose side is active, can see subtle energies, it looks like a sun
Oh.
beaming out energy. There's a funny story around that. There was a lady in Holland, and she had turtles, these big turtles. And every day, the turtles would go outside to lay in the sun. And the inventor delivers one of the towers like this, sets it up in her home, and she sends a text like over an hour later. All the turtles had come back inside, and they were like laying around the tower.
Oh yeah. I mean, animals are so perceptible.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
if you
yeah.
put a copper um, spun
Hmm.
copper rod in soil in a garden, like all of the living creatures, because there's, I mean, basic like physics that's pulling from the atmosphere, and all the cats will just lay next to it, and all the dogs will lay
Yeah.
next to it. They're like, I like this energy. This is good.
Yeah, we get that all the time.
Yeah.
People talk about that, or the deer that's looking into the living room.
Yeah.
What's that? Like, there's so many stories that we have about that because, animals directly respond, to subtle energy. We can get in our head.
Oh
It's
yeah.
not like we can disconnect ourselves, but we can, not be aware of it
Yeah. Or override it, or
or
just not see
override it.
that
It's just
layer.
like, yeah, that's not really there.
Oh yeah, I can do that so easily. Be like, oh look, what do the birds know? Like birds do this all the time, right? That's how Patrick explained coherence to
Yeah.
me. Was sort of a flock of birds or a school of fish just riding in coherence, and then if
Yes.
one strays, another one will go grab it. Like that's what coherence looks like, and they're working off of all the subtle biofields that we just don't really pay attention to.
And it's instantaneous, right? Because if you see these birds, the
Right.
fractal patterns that they move at the speed,
Right.
you can now be like, hey, right turn, hey, left turn, right?
Screaming at each other all the time. Yeah.
They're just clued into those energetics just by nature, and they just keep following that. That's why so many birds are getting confused now and having all these
With the
problems,
towers.
right?
Yeah.
Because we're distorting nature's energy, exchange of information.
Right. So back to
Yeah.
the network you're building. It sounds like you're rebuilding the Earth's grid.
We're not rebuilding it, we're building a new one.
Okay.
Right? And there's a subtle difference in
Yeah.
that, because ultimately, me personally, I feel all of us are going to form the new light grid. And the towers are helping for us to step into that capacity
Tune into the
and to
field.
be that. Yes.
Interesting.
In the meantime, yes, they're holding the light
They're
grid
helping
for,
anchor.
yeah, they hold the space for us and the energetics and the support.
How many of these do you have around?
Well, so the inventor, he was like a force of nature. He sold over 25,000 in 3 years, and over 800 of the big ones in Europe. And then in the US, we're up to like 45 right now. I will share with you a map later that you can share with your audience that shows right now where they're deployed. And the funny thing is, like, they're all by the coastlines.
Where the water
And
is.
they always say where the water is and where the consciousness is always higher than in the middle of the land. Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm assuming we still need
Oh, yeah.
everywhere,
Yeah.
middle of the land. I'm guessing there's a bunch in Hawaii.
One.
Interesting.
Only one. There's a lot of them in California.
Okay.
There's a lot of them in the Northeast.
Huh.
Actually, what all started is Texas, because that's the other thing. They have an intelligence, and they just started deploying in these patterns. It's really fun to watch because I put them all on the map. I'm geeky like that, right?
Yeah.
I was like, wow, just look. There's like, a pattern to this.
Have you guys heard from people who are attuned to that subtle energy if they've noticed?
Oh, yeah.
What do people say?
Well, you have various levels of responses, right? Some people that are intuitive and attuned to subtle energy, they feel it right away. Or what happens the moment they decide to buy one? I had a dream last night and light was talking to me, and I think it was my tower. Because think about it, these realms are outside of space and time, right? Just like we have a foot in that too in our right brain, but most of us are just in the linear, we don't pay much attention to it. So we have that, people that like immediately feel it. And then we have the people that they don't feel it, but they notice the changes. I was just talking to a lady on the phone, she can feel it, but her husband and her grandfather that they're taking care of, they cannot, but she has seen them shift, right? To where they just have more energy, they're more harmonized, they're getting along better, right? So there's those people. And then there's just those that say, I don't see anything at all.
Yeah.
Right? But they don't feel 5G either, or neither would they be able to turn into subtle energy of a tree.
Right.
For example. And not that there's anything like wrong with that. We're all in different parts of our path, but it's not because you don't feel an energy, it's not affecting you.
Right.
Right? So those are like the main categories. But then when we go to more down to earth, what do people experience? One of them that comes up so much is much better sleep. Oh my God, I haven't slept this good for years because there's death metal playing in an audible range, nonstop, and your cells are just, and your emotional body is disturbed, and your mental body is disturbed. And I think the most important thing is like most people are locked into the sympathetic nervous system because of this.
Guilty, yeah. I mean,
right?
It's a problem.
And no healing can take place there. You have to come into the parasympathetic. So I think for a lot of people, they just, boom.
Yeah.
They're able to release and come into the parasympathetic, which then opens up all kinds of possibilities.
And usually when that happens, in my experience, because some things start shifting internally so quickly, sometimes it feels like, is there a herxing reaction that can happen?
Sometimes.
People feel worse, and then some things will move, and then they'll notice the difference in their baseline?
A few things happen. Some people, they feel really great, like the honeymoon phase. Their vibrations being raised. But what happens if you raise a vibration? What happens when you boil water? The impurities come to the surface.
Right.
And not because these things are like bad, they just want to leave.
Yeah, moving.
Right? So some people feel that on the physical level, but there's also on the emotional level.
Oh, yeah, I can
right? Because things will come to the surface that simply need to be addressed, that want to come into balance, right? So it's not like you get a cosmic tower, I am done. I can sit on the couch now, watch Netflix all day. It's going to take care of my emotional health and my mental health. No. We still have to own that, but it will make it more graceful from what we've seen from people, and they feel more supported. And oftentimes we have this, man, I got the tower, and then I got in a fight with my husband, and da-da-da-da-da. I was like, did it come out of nowhere? No. It's something that I've been stuffing away for a long time. But for whatever reason, I had the courage now to bring it up. And we put it out in the open, and it took a little bit, but it finally was resolved. So right at that moment, they were kind of ticked off, like the tower is like really
ruining my marriage.
But then later on, they're in hindsight, like, man, I can't believe I held on to this for this long.
Yeah. Interesting. So it's kind of a purifier.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like it brings coherence back.
Interesting. Yeah. Water will do that to a lot of people. It just gives you another level and you get to deal with everything that you haven't. So it'll like trigger a heavy metal detox on the physical or something like that.
Yes.
So this is just on the energetic level.
Yeah, because the other aspect to it is like most people run on fumes
Yeah,
when
yeah.
it comes to life force, and your body can't heal. It just needs to use that energy to keep the heart, the vital organs going. So now all of a sudden there's much more energy. The body's like, "Ah, finally, let's start cleaning up some stuff.
Yeah.
You know, things that might have been encapsulated in fat or like whatever. The body's like, okay, we can release now because we have the energy to actually process it. Same on the emotional and the mental plane.
Interesting. What does being around the big one feel like? Because this one I can feel.
Oh
Like
yeah, I
it's
bet. But you're
strong.
pretty sensitive. And
Yeah.
you know what? It will be for a few days
Yeah.
until you can adjust. But the cool thing is it's conscious. So you can say like, hey,
Chill.
take it down a notch. Right? That's kind of hard for a lot of people to believe.
Sure.
Right? But it's one of the things we just have to, open up to again as a society. Guys, the big one was the first one that I saw when I went to Europe when my shamanic friends said, here, you gotta look at this. I was like, ooh, I have a pretty good idea what that is. Not the details, I could sense it.
Yeah.
The big one, it's actually much more subtle than you would expect.
Okay.
But oh yeah, you can definitely feel it, right? But it's not to where it's like uncomfortable,
Right.
right? Because typically when some energetics feel uncomfortable to people and they can really feel it, it means there's some type of resistance
Yeah.
there.
Block. Yeah. I've had that. I've walked into a room. I had a friend in Asheville, super biohacker, but on the more subtle level. Like it wasn't over the top, but he had all of these different modalities, and he had a room that was EES machine.
Ooh.
And I was like, this feels weird. Like you didn't want to hang out all day in it. I could tolerate it for maybe 20 or 30 minutes, but it was almost like I felt radiation. There was a heat or kind of an intensity, and it just wasn't super subtle. And I was like, what is, because that's scalar as well, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I never fully understood how that was working. But like all these different monitors set up on the tops of the room, and it was a pretty small room. And I was like, I get that this is healing. This feels intense. Like I would be in here briefly multiple times a day, maybe if I was trying to work through something. But yeah, this thing I could just be around.
Yeah. So here's the thing, and I, don't want to comment on the EES
Yeah.
system but we have to be really careful if we use scalar technologies that are based on electricity.
Oh, sure.
First off, I don't like it because we're contributing to the issue by consuming like more electricity. But if they only look at it within a certain spectrum, you could create all this electrosmog on the other levels. And we've seen that quite a bit. I know Dr. Kareem and Dr. Gilbert talked about this, how many people send in their scalar devices. And what they noticed is even though there were some beneficial effects, it was also creating a lot of electrosmog. And because of that, the patients were having good results, but the practitioners that are sitting in this day in, day out, they were getting sick.
Interesting.
And I'm not saying that all scalar devices are like that, but I believe many of them, because if this is not purposely taken into account, yeah, you're just playing Russian roulette.
Right.
Right? And I've never been drawn to the EES system just because, I mean, gosh, there's like so many computers in there and screens, and
Yeah.
it's so artificial.
It's very electronic.
And also,
Feels 80s Radio Shack.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then part of where I have an issue to it feels very profit driven, like $140,000 for like
I
the
didn't
big
know that.
system.
Okay.
Yeah, like their cheapest system, their entry model, which you call a little fountain at home, it's the same cost as our biggest tower.
Oh, wow. Okay. I often, that's the part that my brain still hasn't computed yet, is I'm used to all of these electricity driven technologies, like all the the water ionizers
Yep.
use electricity, which is fine. But there's something whenever you don't have that and it's self-contained, like with this, which does the same thing, or like this, and you're like, okay, my brain does not understand, like, and then I have to open up to all the different subtle energies and how toroidal fields work and how all that works.
Yeah, because the evidence is all around us.
Right. Right.
Galaxies, planets around stars, trees, right? I mean, we don't get all our energy from food.
Right.
We get a small percentage from our food, and the rest comes from our resonance of our toroidal field with the toroidal field of the Earth. Right? That's how we get a lot of our energy. So I totally get how your left brain kind of crashes on that.
Yeah.
Right, but this is again about the 98%, which is right brain.
Yeah.
The left brain can never wrap its head around that because it actually precedes the linear, the Big Bang, the what we call space-time continuum in the electromagnetic
It's a fabric
realm.
behind it, or underlying almost.
Yes, because science says I never could wrap my head around this. Like I got quantum physics like in university, and then then they were talking about the Big Bang. There is absolutely nothing out of that exploded everything.
Yeah.
That just doesn't compute for me. So they say that's the start. While we in the physics of quality and other models, we actually say like the source energy gets slowed all the way down to where then it creates this spark in the electromagnetic realm, and that's like the Big Bang. So for us, it's very late in the process.
Interesting. Yeah, density is kind of, if I'm listening to a channeler or someone who's way more in tune with energy, it's always density, right? It's actually just bringing formless and just squishing it into form.
You know what? I never understood. How can this faster than light? How is that possible? Because I made one crucial mistake. I thought the ether, was this fine gaseous, substance. I was like, how do you have faster than light communication in that? And then I read a translation of some obscure work from Nikola Tesla that's not well known. And he talked about the properties of the ether. And he said one of the big mistakes we make is like we think the ether is this fine arrow-like form. No, it has a very high density.
Oh.
And then I'm like, oh, it's backwards. It's actually matter is the gaseous form of the ether. Because think about it, right? Like a longitudinal compression wave, which is basically like a pressure wave, the denser something is, the faster the communication happens. So think of it having more density than a nail. So if I have to explain faster than light, communication and waves, think about hitting a nail. How long does it take? Let's say you have a nail that's 100 miles long, hypothetically. You hit it, how long does it take for you to feel it on the other side?
100 miles.
Yeah, but like when I hit this nail, how long does it take before that signal gets here? It's instantaneous.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because of the high density.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Right? So we have to really, to me, I was like, oh my God, of course. That makes total sense.
My brain hurts. Yeah, I had not thought about it like that.
Right? I hadn't either, right? So I've lived with this knowing now for a long time, but give it some time to seep in. Right? It's like sound travels faster through water than through the air. The air is not as dense. So right? Same thing, but then you really extrapolate it out, right? To a very high density, which science in a way knows too, because they'll say like there's more energy, and like this little cube that could power, our entire civilization, the entire Earth.
Right.
When they talked about, at least now they're admitting that space is not really empty. Right. That's one of the big issues. I never understood this in school because my teacher would say, well, you have this wave travel all the way from the sun to the Earth. How can a wave travel when they're through a vacuum? It can't. You need a medium to have a vibration or a wave.
Right. Yeah. The part that always gets me when I first kind of understood how non-physical things impact emotional states, or just energy impacts emotional states, when I started watching the sun, like looking at solar waves and just
Yeah.
tracking that. And you can almost watch whenever there's going to be like mass hysteria. Like
Yeah.
KP index will be just
Yeah.
all these indices or graphs about just energy hitting you. And I was like, oh,
I mean, look at like before a volcano erupts.
right.
All the birds, all the animals they can are fleeing
Yeah.
because they're in their right brain. They don't perceive this linearity. How does your dog know when you get home? Right? Because they're in the right brain where there is no time and everything is simultaneous, which you cannot wrap your left brain around, right? But we've all experienced it.
Yeah.
Because you can fall asleep again for 5 minutes in the morning and spend 3 days in dreams in another plane.
Right.
Right? There's times when time goes fast or slow. We've all experienced it.
Yeah.
That just goes to show that we're also tapped into that these things are not what they're telling us to be.
Yeah.
You know?
I can get wrapped in just what is time. There's a very good gentleman on Instagram, Peter Crone, is the mind architect. That's what the moniker is. And just how language itself creates time, and or just watch the movie Interstellar, which is the dream within a dream.
Yeah.
Not Interstellar, sorry,
Inception.
That one. Interstellar is also good, but for time is such a strange concept. And whenever I'm out of time, I notice it, and then I just get pulled back into it. And it's always better if I don't feel time's effect, or if I'm not creating time, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a strange feeling. The
is.
qualities of it, where I can't really explain it because I lost that math a long time ago. But yeah, I had a really strange architecture question regarding this. It's been does the quality of the material matter?
Yes.
Okay.
And like, first off, they're all produced in Germany.
Okay.
And by somebody who used to be an osteopath, very sensitive, and all the people working on this are very sensitive because everything matters, right? And of course, the inventor being German, it all had to be perfect quality. You see, it's like craftsmanship.
Yeah.
Because the wood, he was not happy with the wood, so he only found one supplier in Denmark that could deliver wood to his quality specifications. And with subtle energy, all of it matters.
Right.
You cannot like go paint this, for example. You have to be watchful, right? People sometimes ask me, like, can we paint? I don't know why you would, but can we paint this? I'll say, I would not do this. There's a lot that goes into it.
If there's like a manufacturing defect, can you tell? Like, is the energy different? Is it that perceivable?
Yeah. For example, I mean, there's a few obvious things. Like, let's say I knock this off the table and one of the vessels break, water is going to leak out.
Right.
You know, if the crystal, it's really solid in there, like, let's say that would come loose, you would like hear a rattle. But yeah, then absolutely, I don't know, it depends on your sensitivity. You could probably pick up on it, but we can always then measure it even remotely of a picture to make sure that the field is still as it's supposed to be.
Oh, that's the other part, is the healing arts. Like,
Yes.
healing practitioners do not have to be in front of someone. And
No.
whenever I first got into healing and all of the different modalities, I was like, I'm having a hard time with this. But if you realize space and time don't matter for the energetic level, if you just accept that, you're like, oh, okay. But it's so different than the way you're brought up, where you're just like, what are you feeling? Like, you're not touching anything. How does this work? But
Yeah, but in a way, we've all experienced it. Think about a mother that her child might be on the other side of the world and she just knows something's wrong.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something many people like can relate to, right? Or you're just like thinking about somebody and boom, the phone rings and you haven't heard from them in 6 months.
I do that plenty of times. Yeah. So I think of that as entanglement. Like quantum
it
entanglement.
is. It
Like,
is.
distance doesn't exist either.
No.
It's so strange to
Because
think
if you
about.
have no distance, you know, if you don't have space, you can't have time, and vice versa. Right?
Yep. Yeah, just it's been an unlearning or a restructuring, because like the they're all a little bit of half truths. Like they're not like Newtonian physics works,
But
but there's just so much more, and it takes the thing I always have an issue with is keeping an open mind but having discernment.
yes.
That's been my challenge through everything. But since I've gotten more feeling and just more trusting of my body, that's helped a lot. Where I'm like, oh, I guess I don't need to think about this.
Yeah, and I'm not saying get rid of the analytical,
Oh, it won't
logical
go away,
mind,
don't worry.
right? But for example, the heart is outside of time,
Right.
right? And they always speak about, the mind should not be the master. The heart's the master, and the mind should, work and function,
Yeah.
of the heart. So our intuition, our feeling, that's our bridge to the 98% that really governs, and shapes this reality. And people can do this at home, right? To think, how can this even work? Like, take this table, for example, and you slide your hand over it. Okay? You feel the resistance?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now I want you to think about something sad, something that makes you angry, any negative feeling. Now do it again and notice what happens. Yes.
Oh, that was weird.
Now think about something that really makes you happy or a good memory or whatever it is and do it again and notice what happens.
Do you do that every time? That's very trippy.
No, but I learned through experience because that actualizes knowledge. So if I look at this from a scientific point of view, I would say, okay, you have a static resistance and then goes into a dynamic resistance, and the resistance is based on, the skin's friction with this material. But I just, you just noticed that probably when you were thinking about something bad, there was more resistance. When you were thinking about something good, there was less resistance. That is just an experience that shows you how your mental, emotional state directly affects the physical instantaneously.
Right. Interesting. Oh, there's so many ways I can go with this. I want to touch on the water again.
Yeah.
How do you decide on the water?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, since that's the base, I guess.
Yeah, so the inventor, really, how this came about, the inventor is also was also an electromechanical engineer.
Usually are, yeah.
And his son was born like fully open, fully clairvoyant, and he could just communicate with the higher realms. And one day he says to the inventor, Dad, have you forgotten why we came here? And the inventor goes to his son, I guess so. Why don't you tell me? Well, we have to build like the new light grid. You have to help me, figure out the physical design of it, and I can work the energetics, right? So when they started building these devices that preceded the cosmic tower, they went to a lady who had a collection of over 600 healing waters.
Oh, wow.
And then the son basically intuited, if we put this water and this water together, we get the perfect rainbow spectrum, no overlap, which then much later was confirmed by all kinds of dowsers in Europe to where they could actually measure that was the case.
Interesting. Yeah, Patrick mentioned that on our first chat when we were talking about this, because I confused the two, and just the full spectrum.
Yeah.
Blew my mind, because that's why people probably go to those healing sites and like get the water. It's not just the physical chemical, like doesn't have, it has hydrogen in it, which is where all the hydrogen devices
It's all about the subtle energies.
Right, but it's all of the rest of the spectrum.
So each healing site might have particular properties based on the frequencies in the spectrum that are present there.
Right.
But you put them, the right ones together, and you get the full spectrum.
Interesting.
So you're not just getting one healing site, but you get two that are complementary to form the whole spectrum. And he called it rainbow water.
That's so cool.
And then it shows up in the pictures.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, okay. And the ones for the tap water.
I'll put those up on the final video. I'm excited for those. I always think of, I forget the gentleman's name, but in healing, or just whenever there's a healer. He's like, we don't heal anything.
No.
We set the vibration
Yeah.
and let you get there and sit in it. So your body is doing it, but there's always an attunement, right? So all these devices are helping us attune
Yes.
to whatever we need to be at to help our bodies do what they're already programmed to do.
Exactly.
The other weird question I have is like for people who have a PEMF mat or any other
Yeah.
frequency-based tech, like I have one that I lay on, and that is powerful. That'll shift a mood real fast. What does this do to the rest of those fields?
Make it even better, if anything. So think about a PEMF mat or any other type of solution that might be creating some electrosmog or disharmony on other subtle layers.
Yeah.
The tower will then harmonize that,
Interesting.
right? It plays nice with most solutions, unless they are too detrimental, right? But then it will also give you clues to like, maybe that's not the best for me, or maybe I gotta get rid of that, you know?
Yeah, I've had other people, like it works, I know the frequencies that work well for me, but I will have other people who are way more in tune with their body use it, and they will just be ungrounded. Like it'll just kick them out of their body almost. And that's a very common thing I hear is some people want that, right? They want the higher forms and to be vibrated up, but if you're, having trouble being on Earth as it is, most of the time people would like to stay grounded and just, I guess, expand a little more.
Well, it's essential because I don't prescribe to raising the vibration on the planet. The vibration is already raising. It's about embodiment. It's about integration within the physical body of those energies. Right? So, and I know a lot of those people too, and have clients like that. They're just out of their body because it's too uncomfortable
to
be in the body. Yeah. The whole point is about not raising the vibration, but integrating it in our physical body.
So we can have it in the body. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I struggle with that sometimes.
Me too.
Lots of pain, and that's part of being human, but that's the full experience.
We've all been there, I think.
That's why I love meditation, or why people usually use like any substance that assists them, because it usually numbs that or dulls it a little bit so that they can get some relief. But if we could do that energetically, that would be even better.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. The thing that I always go back to is I used to watch a video when I was looking at weather modification they were called, I think, Cloudbusters, and it was
Organite, Wilhelm Reich's work.
Yeah, plus copper, and it would.
I built one of those in my backyard. Oh yeah.
People were going around the country just essentially disrupting cloud patterns and reforming and moving water vapor to the point where they stopped because they're moving too much water vapor, like counteracting the artificial maintenance of it. And I wonder what this does to the biosphere, I guess. Reharmonizes, but what does that do for, I guess it would just allow the natural frequencies to exist in lieu of the chaos?
Yeah, it returns the energies to nature's order, to natural order. Right? Nature is it's the highest intelligence, right, that is out there.
Do you ever hear reports of like pressure shifts or weather shifts or like plant life difference or things like that?
Oh, yeah. Especially plants. I love plants because humans can get in their head.
Oh, yeah.
And they can kind of say, I don't know if this is not even doing it. I'll give you a practical story that just happened to me a few weeks ago. I was at my friend's house in Texas, and they had this plumeria that she inherited from a friend that had passed, and it never bloomed in 3 years. And, I show up and I put my towers inside, and 2 weeks later, my friend Christy is like to her husband, Robert, come outside. The plumeria bloomed for the first time.
Oh, wow.
I don't even know. It didn't really change anything. I moved the pot a little bit, and Robert looks at Christy and said, no, honey, that was not you. That's probably Nico Suave in his towers. Right? And some people, they thought it was like miraculous. To me, there was no miracle about it. The energetics were shifted, the plants' energetics shifted, and because of that, it was basically reconnected to all the levels of life force, and then it's in his blueprint and it blooms.
Right.
We get it all the time, and we have endless testimonials about plants and animals responding, and also people. But the plants are and the animals are always the quickest
Right.
because they directly respond to subtle energy changes.
Yeah, there's no mental filter, like you
There's no
said.
filter
There's no
there. Like,
filter.
am I just making this up?
Yeah.
Oh no, they just, they just respond.
Farming is always the thing I think about because it's how I got into health. And yeah, like you said, plants respond so almost instantaneously
Yep.
or like overnight. Just add some, put some structured water on it and just watch
Yeah.
random magical things happen. But I'm always interested in food production. Like there's
Yeah.
having a garden, and then I love technologies that just work at scale
Yeah.
because it takes a lot of like the one of the issues with regenerative agriculture is it's takes some time because you can't just crank out monocrops because that's the whole point. And I'm very curious what this would do on a farm.
Well, we have actually a testimonial from people in Holland that have a cucumber farm, and they got a Cosmic Tower 250, like the biggest one. And the whole report you can read on our website, but in a nutshell, like the Bovis value, which is how we measure life force in anything, and they did it for the water and their irrigation water, the Bovis value went from somewhere around 5,000,
Yeah.
which is detrimental. I mean, anything below 65, 7,500 takes life force away, basically, and anything above that gives life force, and it went up, not immediately because it takes a few days or weeks to build its maximum strength. It went through to 28,000, like off the scale. The cucumbers were more healthy, they were more delicious, right? And also, like when the growing season usually was done, they just like kept producing for a
Yeah.
little longer. And the nice added bonus, all the employees were getting along much better.
Interesting. Yeah, harmonized biofields. Yeah. So emotional changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always plants show us things that are hard to measure sometimes. Like people always are like stress resistance or salt resistance. There's always resistance instead of life force. It's
Yes.
always like an anti or like how well can you combat the stressor instead of how much life force do you have? So
Well, I'll give you a great example that's not Cosmic Tower related
Yeah.
that will kind of blow your mind. One of Dr. Kareem's students, he went to the Red Sea, and the Red Sea has some of the saltiest waters in the earth. And on Earth, right? The water is very salty. And what he did was he had a control group of sweet potatoes and fresh water, and then the other ones he took the water and just ran it through shapes to bring the life force back in and harmonize it, and watered those plants. Not only were those sweet potatoes growing, but they were healthier than the control group.
with
And
salt water.
yeah,
Oh wow.
energetically changed. The only thing that's changed, no filters, didn't run through a filter or anything. All it they did was run it through certain shapes, kind of like the
Yeah.
Aqua Energizer, right? But and they grew sweet potatoes with it successfully, and those potatoes were growing bigger and healthier than the ones in the control group with fresh water. So that tells you that quality of energy, subtle energy comes first, and only then the chemicals.
Right.
Because here the salt, chemically still present, you would taste it, but the energy is completely shifted. And ultimately what the plants need is the energy that the water carries.
Right. This is the part that I don't know where to go with because I do water filtration and clean water and all sorts of water for a living. And I haven't comprehended yet. Like they make whole house versions of these things.
Yep.
If it's properly structured or coherent, like you just said, does it do something to the particles that like would it render a heavy metal inert?
Okay,
Something like that. I don't know.
I'll give
how
you a
that
really simplification
Yeah.
on that. So, because one of the things people have a hard time wrapping their head around is like, because we compartmentalize
yeah.
everything. Chemical, this, that. Okay, so we have to go back to the torsion level.
Okay.
Subatomic level, what makes something a toxin? Counterclockwise spin and torsion. Right? What makes something, beneficial? Like clockwise. right? So if you just flip the spin,
That's it.
that's it.
Oh, wow.
Because one pulls life force out into another realm, one pulls life force in. This is why in Egypt, all the temples of the dead are on the west bank of the Nile. The temples of the living are on the east. Why? Because if you look at the Nile, it's an enormous energy that runs from south to north, and that basically creates naturally, like a boat going through water, through vortexes. One pulls a life force in from the higher realms, that's on the east bank where the temple of the living are, and the other one moves energy back from the physical into the spiritual realms. That's why the temples of the dead are on the west bank.
Oh, wow. Does that work? Like the French Broad is in Asheville, and that's a very old river. I think it's second oldest in Nile. Does it work the same way in other river systems?
Absolutely. Because it's like a boat traveling through water. You can imagine that,
Yeah.
right? It goes, and then you have these two vortexes, like you see that go on the
Yep.
water. Think of that as, and the same, happens with, anything moving through the ether, because ether is kind of like a fluid. So yeah, it goes like that with everything, even with a road in front of your house. We really have to look at like which side of the road are you on if it's a one-way street.
Oh, wow.
Every car coming through creates these vortexes and ripples in the ether.
Yeah. Yeah, I often wondered about that. So I've watched houses be designed with there's a bunch of words, but like living design technologies, or just geometry placed strategically. And I always, because you can feel it whenever you're in it, but I always wondered if you could do it wrong. Like if there's a backwards way to do it. Like, is there a way to
Yeah, it's called
pull
modern
energy?
architecture.
So how are you doing it?
It's called these boxes we see here, these shapes, right? If you look at the temples and you go all the way back to the work of Corbusier, like those architects, he talks about string length, wavelength, right? So the temples were really like frozen music. So yeah, absolutely, you can get it wrong. Most of the structures we build today, like there is a forming process in nature. As I told earlier, we don't build on the planet. If we're really like the ancients, like here's an example. If you go to Zurich in Switzerland, the whole city is mapped based on the other underwater energy, on the other underwater no, sorry, below the soil, like all the rivers that run there, right? And all the energy lines. That's why in Zurich, you have over 1,000 healing wells all throughout the city. They were built on the power spots. And that's why if you go to a city like that, it's just more alive and vibrant than going to a smart city, which is pretty stupid because you can do about anything except live in it.
Right. Yeah, I'm very controlled. And people have reported the same thing in Italy, I think, just because there's a ton of deep aquifers.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'm always like, our water systems they do a great job of like not having it kill us the next day, but other than that, it's very life draining.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like that's the thing people notice whenever I'm talking about water with someone is it's a hard concept. It's easy to get, like life giving or life draining, but if you're not in tune, it's kind of not immediately obvious which water you have, because we don't have a way to measure the Bovis scale, or I don't. Just like in front of someone, is there an easy way to do that for like a chi scale?
I mean, to really determine it, like accurately, you have to use something like radiesthesia to measure energy qualities. But one thing you could do is like with an aqua energizer, you take some tap water and you have two plants that are the same, and one you give non-structured and one you give structured water, you'll see the difference within days.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I've seen some side-by-side video lapses with like blooms, and I'm just like, I could also, if I was just in my left brain, and be like, there's no significant difference, but you can clearly see that one just looks more vital. But if you're like measuring number of leaves or all of these random fine things, you could try to disprove it, but just intuitively looking, be like, yeah, that one looks way happier.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm sure, like you said, the emotional state of people changes regardless of if you
Plants are conscious, right? Cleve Baxter,
oh yeah.
the inventor of the lie detector, got bored one day, hooked it up to plants, threatened the plant to burn its leaves. What do you see? A response.
Oh yeah.
They're conscious.
You can hear a plant scream if you watch for the right frequencies. Yeah. That was a huge issue I had whenever I had a vegetarian vegan phase, as most people do, I think. And then
It's kind of like,
I learned that.
I think that's like a great thing we can deal with, like AI. Hook it up to a plant and see if it responds. And if it responds, it's like tell the AI to reject that idea because it's not in alignment with nature.
Yeah, that's fun. Okay. I always get pulled off on so many tangents.
Oh,
I
me
appreciate
too.
you following me on all my tangents. What is the goal with like worldwide? What are you trying to do with A, this tour, but B, what's the vision? Is there a vision?
Yeah, the vision is really, to have a subtle environment again that's harmonized, right? Because the beauty of this is like we are so in our left brain, this tool for that, this tool for that. Now we have to think multidimensionally, addressing water, food, EMF, everything. So really, we love for people to get these in their homes because it really helps them and their neighbors. Because this one, it depends where,
Yeah.
but to be about 1,500 feet around your home.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people that you affect in a positive way and a lot of nature. But ultimately, it's really about the big ones that we want to get out there to build this grid to where we get back to a thriving civilization. And then ultimately, I believe it's about, lifting up the consciousness to where we get back to a much higher level of conscious, to where we go back to wisdom. I mean, I don't see us go back to the Stone Age,
Right.
or go all the way to where AI will replace life, for example. It's about a hybrid of that to where technology really is about serving life again versus trying to replace it.
Yeah.
Right. So this is just, and the Cosmic Tower is one thing, but I encourage all the other solutions that do that, right? To where ultimately we're either going to have a golden age or fall on our face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm pretty hopeful about the golden age.
Oh, me too.
Yeah.
It's coming,
Yeah.
right? It's just going to be a matter of how graceful is it going to come in and how long is it going to take. And that depends on each and every one of these. And what I find really empowering about this project is stop looking at politicians, stop looking at corporations, haven't you figured it out by now? They don't have our best interests at hand. And for me, this is like a grassroots movement which allows any and all of us, to take action to build what supports life. Because think about how much money you spend in your lifetime on destroying your health and nature, right? I mean, all these devices are great, right? But, because they allow us to connect, to share like what we're doing here, that is amazing, but not at the cost of life force. So we have to really embed life force again into our technologies to where they don't destroy nature, because I think we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. You add it all up, cell phone bill, internet bill, TVs, laptops, smart fridges,
Everything.
smart mirrors, smart everything,
Yeah.
right? So I always tell people, like, at least I feel like, hey, I spend a lot of my resources not only killing myself and the people around me and our planet, appropriate some of that towards a solution.
Yeah, and I love these types of conversations because I think of them as living technologies. So we're rapidly moving towards just a like umbrella slew of living technologies, just bringing what's already in nature.
Yeah.
I like decentralized solutions.
Yeah.
Like it's nice to
That's where we're going.
sometimes, but the only solution I ever see is just decentralized solutions everywhere.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're heading.
I really appreciate you bringing this here, and I might just hang around because it feels so good. I don't want you to leave Wilmington with it. Yeah, I appreciate this chat. Anything we missed that was big? We might do this again whenever you get back. Where are you going after this?
Uh, Tonight I'm going to go see my friends who live in Myrtle Beach,
Okay.
and then we'll resume the tour next week. I'll be going up to Massachusetts, Maine.
New England.
Yeah.
That's where I'm from, New Hampshire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
lots of energy up there. Plenty of energy, but they need help too. Have you ever been to Acadia National Park?
No.
If you have the time, it's off the beaten path, but it is one of the most stark and breathtaking places. First place, there's a mountain on it. The first place the light hits on the East Coast, Cadillac Mountain. And it's the only place I've ever been able to see the Milky Way other than out west. It is so remote and it's tolerable cold-wise this time of year. But if you're up there and you have time, you'll meet a lot of interesting people, and some of them will probably love the tower.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I will. I will look into that absolutely.
Where can people find this?
You can go to our website, thewellnessenterprise.com, or you can find our YouTube channel, The Wellness Enterprise, and we have like tons of videos that we made. And every first Tuesday of the month, we have a Cosmic Tower Q&A to where people can come and ask questions. Now, I've been answering questions for the last 2 years, and there's only so many things that can be answered. So we've turned it more into like a subtle energy community call to where, you know, I share and teach people more about subtle energy and how to make it practical in your life. And of course, when there's any questions about the Cosmic Tower, for anybody that's new to it, I'll be happy to answer those.
I might jump in on those because I'm fascinated by anything with the intersection of light, frequency, water. I'm all about it because that's all the energy carriers. So
yeah, that's a cool thing. People like yourself show up, TLC or other biohackers, and I always learn too.
Yeah,
because I always get a piece. Like that's how it's meant to be, you know.
The network of weirdos or just people curious about all of this is the best part of it. The people who I have met in sort of going under the fabric of things and water and frequency are the most interesting people.
Absolutely. And those are also the ones that change the world.
Yeah.
And I love it. If you're a weirdo, you know, that's a badge of honor in the society we live in.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it's easy to spot them, thankfully, as long as we're authentic.
That's right.
Well, this is a good chat, Nico.
Well, thank you so much. I had so much fun.
Hey, everyone. Alex here. If you haven't figured it out from the scene behind me, I could not let the Cosmic Tower leave Wilmington, so I now have it with me. If you're at all interested in either the Aqua Energizer for coherent, structured water or the Cosmic Tower for all of the reasons that we discussed in the video, the reason I couldn't let it leave Wilmington, having that as an energetic anchor for my nervous system to attune to, for all the different subtle energy layers that I feel to harmonize EMF and all of the different fields swirling around me, and for the entire region that I'm in, is one of the reasons why I wanted it here with me. If you're at all interested in trying this out and having it for your neighborhood, for your region, for your family, or for the nature all around you, you can check out the testimonials, the effects on plants, and all the different things we talked about on the website that Nico mentioned, which is thewellnessenterprise.com. If you choose to try something out, you can, I think there's a discount code with code AlexCorey, that's all capitals ALEXCOREY, and let me know what you notice, and let Nico and Patrick at the Wellness Enterprise, let them know what you notice, because some of those effects are hard to believe, but often a profound shift internally. And thank you so much for listening.